Rolling. Welcome to Best Boys Film Podcast, an amateur film study podcast for the average Joe, the buffest buffs, and the cringest bingers. I'm your host, JP, and I'm joined by my brother, professional Hollywood videographer,
Kory with a story. Welcome back. Riveting, exciting, theatrical things happening over in the Pit Bros studios.
out here in the pit.
That's what we should call it.
Welcome to the pit.
Here to talk about movies and shit.
Talking about movies and shit in the pit.
Oh, man.
All right.
But,
I'll
yeah.
have to make a new theme song, and it'll be like metal theme songs.
Get Kid Rock. Get in the pit and try to love someone. Just have it on a soundboard just going. Oh, man. Great album.
Yeah, piece of shit, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's...
Piece of shit, though.
He just looks like Dr. Phil now with a cowboy hat, and I can't stop laughing.
Like
at it.
yeah, like a skullet. Oh, I guess he
Yeah.
It doesn't have a skullet. I think he has much more hair than me. So
I've never heard that before. That's so
you never
funny.
heard the term? You've never heard the term skullet?
No, that was the first time.
Yeah, that's a bald man, but the George Costanza area
Yeah.
is just long.
I
Like
love
Larry
that.
David, but longer.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so awesome.
Well, have you ever seen like where they have the ring around, but then they just have a ponytail or something?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's kind of like that, but if they let their nuts hang, if you know what I mean.
Oh man. Well, welcome back everybody to the Skullet podcast.
The skullets, yeah, we're gonna talk about the history of the skullet.
Yeah.
And what a way to start off a discussion about Citizen Kane.
I know, right?
This I'm really excited to talk about this. I was going into this not knowing how I'd feel. Old movies is notoriously our blindest spot. I usually when I try good old movies, I like them. It's just like diving in, and getting used to the water, And it's not the black and white that bothers me, because every time there's a black and white movie that's later, I usually nut for some reason. Like The Lighthouse or something.
Mm.
So that doesn't bother me. So I think it's just just not as exposed to the pre-70s movies as much as other things growing up. Our dad likes westerns, so I'm sure there's movies from the 60s and earlier that we've watched. But besides that, and a handful of movies for school, I've seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and I've seen some John Wayne movies. But that's really about it. And I feel like it's been something I've wanted to shore up for a while, and might as well start at the top. At least for Americans, at least for American films, and let's begin. Is there so you've seen this before? You saw it in school.
Yeah, and I back then, along with my hot eraser head take, I notoriously just hated this movie in college because I just thought it was boring and long. And I will say, watching it now as an adult, I appreciate it a lot more, and I don't think it's a boring movie. I think it's just a college age Kory who just wanted to be Michael Bay at the time. Where's all the explosions?
I'm just gonna say this once, and I don't want to compare I don't want to compare at all, really. But this movie has way more energy and shit going on in it than I think Mank did. And
Mm.
I like both of these films, but this is I've never seen an old film with so much energy, to be honest. The first third of it is just a breakneck pace with this
Mhm.
like this kind of montage of his life through the news. It's like we get in each phase of the film, we're kind of getting a different perspective of this man, Charles Foster Kane. Um, and I think it's fascinating. So many techniques, so many things. That I've seen in other films. It's just like constant. Like it's like every trick in the book they put into this film is what I feel like. And I'm no expert in production or anything like that. You definitely are more our subject matter expert in that area. But boy, I'm just blown away. And the first, like the opening shots with like the fence and
Mhm.
like we're getting these weird, like it's coming up on Xanadu, which is his like his palace that he's built over his life that's unfinished. Um, and it's like you don't know what it is because if you don't know what the movie's about beforehand, it could be anything. We don't even know where we are. It looks exotic. It looks like we're
Mhm.
far away. The fences makes it look like bleak. There's like a bleak emptiness to it. It's kind of spooky. There's like monkeys and cages and uh it's just it's an interesting opening, and then after that is when we go into the news thing with the narrator, and it's just like bang bang bang, and it's like constant like dissolves and overlays and text on the screen, and you're just getting barraged with stuff, information, but also like stimuli, and in a way that I think not even all modern films don't really do this, but some certain ones do. It kind of reminded me, I just because we watched it recently, but the French Dispatch, um, with the
Mhm.
way the transitions and there's a use of miniatures and matte paintings and these big open wide shots where people are moving around and like just the craft of that style. Obviously, Wes Anderson incorporates a lot of older practical techniques with modern ones, and I feel like that's kind of what this is for 1941. It's just like brand new stuff and old stuff, and incorporating things from his background in theater and radio shows. It's like so many mediums coming together. Like the sound design, I guess, was heavily influenced by radio plays and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. It's really it's a force, and I wanted to say this right off of the bat, and I'm gonna give it right back to you. But this is our takes of this movie. There's really nothing that we could add to the conversation of Citizen Kane that has not been said in the last 80 years. Uh, and we're just here, and we are regular guys given our experience with the film. And I wanted to preface the discussion, because we might say something, on whatever that is not the standard, but or just because I don't understand how things are made in terms of technical things. But boy, I can feel it. The hype. This lived up to the hype for me. I was prepared to, like I said, I was skeptical, but lived up to the hype.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously, you said you've seen this before, and you didn't, you were lukewarm on it before. How did you feel about Citizen Motherfucking Kane in 2021?
A great more appreciation. There's so much shit that I just missed the first time because you're watching it in a classroom, and pausing the movie to talk about things all the time, where your teacher is kind of like a weird way to try to digest a film. But also, back when I was in college, I was just kind of like one of those, like, I don't want to be in the classroom. I just want to shoot and just, yeah, I wasn't the best student. But now watching this, having a lot more of appreciation for cinema and just working in it the last decade, there's so much more layers to this than I noticed before, in the original take. And like you said, with the breakneck speed, it's I would say until they talk to old man Jedediah, that it is pretty just fucking nonstop not off the rails, but just like breakneck, like you were saying, until that point, and it's just so it holds your attention. The first hour of the movie flies. And the performances of everything, it's like you feel at first because or this is starring Orson Welles, but he doesn't appear much in it until outside of the news things of him as an old man, until you start getting into the flashback sequences with the when the newspaper guys go to interview everybody. And but there's so much going on, you just kind of, like, for me at least, I forgot that it's like, when is he gonna come in, and just kind of there's just so much stimulation. But then it comes down to the performances of everything, and it is just so good, and it feels like a modern movie just shot with very old cameras in the way that it all the scenes are kind of arranged and stuff. It's like I feel like this is one of the first like true B-roll shots in a movie where you're just setting up the setting and everything. Like everything, you can definitely feel how the influences from doing the radio and theater come into this, because every new scene or set, the camera like starts on like just kind of like the name or just a statue or just something to set where you are, to know
crazy
to ground you in the
transitions
world.
too. There's like really interesting transitions. There's one in particular in the third act that was like a jump scare to me. This just top to bottom, like the costuming and the makeup and the performances and the writing and the camera work, the cinematography. It's just everything is pretty perfect. It's like I said, that doesn't mean that everyone is going to walk away from this film liking it based on what the story is or based on, their exposures to, the evolution of pop culture since this movie's come out. Even when it came out, it was not a, box office success. It bombed, but for factors that we will talk about later, I think we should talk about the production more. Or not the production, but like how it did and the reception and the evolution of its perception, I think would be good discussion to have between Mank and this, because they're kind of, there's connective tissue there. But yeah, Orson Welles is 25 when they were making this, and he's 26 when it came out. I might be a year off, but it's just his performance is amazing. Obviously, he's got an incredible voice, but we only see him young. We only see him in his 20s for maybe 2 scenes, and they're long. Like one of them is long, but he's mostly in middle-aged form for the film, and he looks and feels and it's sold. When he in the end, when he's kind of like limping around an old man, the zombie walk a little bit isn't quite as good, but man, as a middle-aged man, it was so incredibly convincing. The makeup on his neck and his eyes, obviously the lack of color, you can get away with more, like we've talked about that with Night of the Living Dead, in terms of makeup effects and special effects. But I just was blown away by the performance and the other performances as well. But I can't help but be transfixed on Kane. Jedediah was good too, as well as Susan, the character Susan, the opera singer towards the end, is a really great performance. But the shot, and now I have up on the screen one of my favorite shots from the film, which is the campaign speech where he's in front of the
giant poster.
Giant poster, and like we see it from the back of the room, and he's talking, and just like, man, is that incredible.
The production design and scale of so much of this movie it just seems so much bigger than when it was made. And then when you and I were talking about it, I think either at the end of the last podcast or in between, about we were guessing when this was made, trying to remember, and we both said I think like 50s or 60s, and just having that, like, the grand scale of everything in this movie just really adds to the immersion of the setting, and you're in. I feel like it was a great way of just sucking in an audience, not even just something phantasmal, but just something more, just, I guess, like tycoon people. What's really going on behind the scenes? They're just telling a story of a kid who just wanted to ride his sled and hang out with his family.
I think a lot of and it's really is a team of incredible people here too. It goes beyond Orson Welles. His name, is slapped at the top. Starring, writing, directing, producing, but and Mank touches on this, but even beyond Mankowitz, the Greg Toland, the cameraman, the cinematographer, is considered one of the best of his era and highly influential on French stuff and in the 50s and 60s, and considered one of the best of his era. And like this, there's a lot of parts involved here, and obviously, I think and this is something I thought about my own experience, and I don't want to this is nothing in to compare to anything, but just in terms of directing a creative project, in terms of I have experience, making an album and whatnot, and anyone who has experience with making an album, it doesn't matter the genre, because if it's rock, you have a band. If it's hip hop or whatever, you're kind of curating your features and the instrumentalists you're working with and the engineers, and more. It's so much more than what you can physically control yourself, and you have to be good about curating incredible talents and putting them in places to succeed and giving them exactly what they need to succeed. And trusting them with, because their abilities and you trust them. That's just the attributes of a great director in any sense, even as a manager and at a job or something. Is just knowing the abilities of your team and allowing them to succeed, and knowing when to push, but also knowing when to be hands off and let them do their thing in their element, and whatnot. I really think that this is a testament to that as well. Even though it's, at face value, it's Orson Welles, but as we've learned with Mank and with, and as you look into the production of the film and what the other parts involved, it really is a sum of its parts.
A sum greater than the combination of its parts, even.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I get what you're saying on that. I have a lot of notes about the cinematography in this. They play a lot into, back in the old movies, there's not a lot of super shallow depth of field like you have now. That's like what everything is.
Yeah.
And in this, they don't have that. They're very deep depth of field, but they play on that intentionally. And the one scene that really stole it for me was whenever Kane was finishing the dramatic critique or whatever of Susan's opera, and you have Jed has just woken up from his hangover or whatever and is walking towards the camera, but you have left of frame Orson taking up the whole frame, and both are in perfect focus, while you have all this dramatic lighting and noir feeling lighting on it. It was very powerful looking, and there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie that is just playing to the scenery. Even with the cross dissolves with Old Man Jed, they have things with him overlaying on top of the opera on top of over other scenes, and it just kind of works in this both things are in focus and both things are meant to be seen, but it doesn't feel overwhelming, and it just feels kind of like how Wes Anderson is, just kind of feels balanced. Because it's not symmetrical, but balanced.
No, yeah. It's definitely not symmetrical as much as it's it makes use of the entire frame.
Yes.
This is every, how they say a great film cinematography wise, every shot is a painting. This is an example of that. Every shot is great. The use of Dutch angles. There's a ton of that. And for effect and to give this larger than life feel. The deep focus thing you're talking about, I read a lot about that, and I did not fully understand it, but you've helped explain it a bit. The one scene that stood out to me, and when I was obviously I was blown away by the whole intro, but once we settled into regular movie, the thing that blew me away was when it was in when he was a kid and they're at his parents' house. He was from, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, in Colorado, that's it, the Midwest, and his parents were giving him to some rich man to be raised, and they're talking to the parents are having a conversation inside with the rich man. I forget his name, and
It's Mr. Thatcher.
you can see young Charles Kane outside playing, and the snow's coming down, and you can just watch. You can just sit there and get lost in just watching the kid play and not listen to the scene. And it's like picture in picture. That's what I kept thinking. I was like, wow, this is great. And I've seen people do this many times, and I think I said this earlier, but I think a thing to remember also is this movie invented things, but also it's very much a compiling of techniques from other directors, foreign directors, like we said, theater and radio and etc. Like, I think that's what makes it special is it's a collage of techniques and compacted so much and together and so dense that it makes it just incredibly enthralling to watch, especially for being from 1941.
Yeah, especially in an especially in an era when there's so much of the films of there are just kind of adapting like the way that a theater is displayed and the way it's shot, that is. And this feels very three-dimensional in the way it's shot, with the moving parts it has. Especially what sold it for me on that was when a lot of the use of Dolly pullback shots, so you really felt like you were within the set rather than just being like in just standard shots around the set.
Oh yeah, there's some
you know what I mean?
There was like some pans. There was the one shot. I don't know where it was, but it was like it was on a statue, and then you could hear a woman talking to like a receptionist talking.
Yeah,
and then it pulls down and out, and I was like, oh shit. It wasn't the smoothest pull, but I noticed that there was a little clunk and they kind of edited it at the end. In the other pulls, I noticed it starts to fade when it gets a little clunky. But that one in particular, like, man, that looks so cool.
That's the first one that made me write it down. That's the look at the memoir, like diary writing Thatcher guy who adopted him.
Yeah, that's right. They're looking at his manuscript.
That's it. But yeah, that was the first one I saw and wrote down, and it was just like that was. I was like, oh, that seems a little modern for this movie. That seems a little out of place for something shot around the time. But even in the scenes where right after the newspaper montage, when they have all the guys, the writers in the room looking at the projection, they're talking about what to do next. Like even that it just feels so. The way the camera pops around the room, it feels like you're in the room rather than you feel like you're shooting into a set. Which is very common at the time.
And there's a lot of like more claustrophobic sets. I mean, there's a lot of open big sets too, but like the particular one in the writer's room, it's like small and it's dark and cramped, and everybody's smoking. And
reminded me of the Blade Runner shot.
Yeah. You're right. I was like, this has been used many, many, many times, and it's supposed to be indicative of writers in the 40s. But the lighting there, like, so the light was shining through the two windows, and then because of all the smoke, it was like the beams were really, really noticeable. And this guy was walking around the room talking, and the light is like changing as he's moving around the room, and it looks cool the entire time. And it's like a spotlight on his head at one point, like it's like a natural spotlight, and they use it like a spotlight. And it's just like, man, the attention to the detail and the effects. There was a shot later in the movie where they have gas coming. They have a gas flame, and the gas because back in the day, they had gas lamps instead of electricity in some places, and the fire was coming out of each of the pipe things, and he's talking and he's like, and then he turns it off. And the whole scene gets darker, and he sits down, but the lighting is still on the bottom half of the shot, and just comes down, and it was like, wow, that was super cool. With it's just this shot was really just to do this lighting effect, but it was worth it. Like, it felt like a demonstration a little bit, but he was like saying, he was saying some kind of metaphor about the light of this gas, and then turns it off and or something. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know the scene you're talking about. I want to say it's when him and Jed are when they first bought the newspaper and they're talking to the editor of the newspaper. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, like after they get rid of the old editor.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was super cool. There's so many like just gags in this that are so great. I was shocked to I didn't really notice it the first time I watched it because I was a college kid, but the just so much noir lighting out of this. Like you feel that like 20s gangster feel with the lighting in it still, but it's not used to be like more like it's made to obviously enhance the dramatics, but in a different way than you would on like a suspenseful like kind of detective thing or some gangster flick of the era. Um,
Well,
this
it is
is
a mystery. The movie is
yeah.
ultimately at its core. I feel like we forgot to mention that the movie at its core is supposed to be a mystery. And the writers after the movie opens with after the this intro that Charles Kane has died, and they're trying to get a story out of it. And these writers come up, the last word. We heard that his last word was Rosebud. And they're trying to find out what it means, so they're digging through all these different accounts of his life, and through them trying to find out what it means, we learn more and more about him from these different perspectives. So like the mystery is ultimately not, I don't know, it's not what really is driving me, and I think that's something that I've seen some people say as a critique or whatever. It's just like it ends up being like not being enough to keep you through the movie, but I definitely disagree with that because I'm just immersed in this world and I just want to learn more about this guy and all the things that why didn't he become the governor, and I was super interested in that because they kept talking about his politics and how one era in his life he was an anarchist and one era of his life he was a fascist and he was whatever you wanted him to be, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say the second half, maybe the last third of this movie is where my critiques would come in, just because it feels like it drags in moments. Like you do have cool things that keep it going, and I think that are just enough to keep it going from feeling like too long. But the governor's speech thing is just so enthralling with just like the spectacle of it and just the overall grandeur of the speech and Wells's performance. But that's like one of those things that you can ride that high into the next scene. But that goes immediately into the blackmail scene, which was rad, to be honest. Like that was cool. Well, having
the blackmail scene was awesome. That I was like the whole political arc of the movie is the best part of the movie to me. The blackmail scene was great. It was great, and it's just like nothing he could do about it, and he was just gonna go down, with his pride, and he didn't expose anybody. He just took it. I don't know. I agree about so I don't think that the movie gets bad. Like I'm still entertained and interested in what's happening. But I would say that the arc with the singer is definitely the weakest perspective of the film. Everything else, all the other parts are great. Like I am 100% interested and I want more. But that is the one point where I was like, okay, like I'm waiting for like this section to be done with and then move on to I knew the ending was coming by that point. And we move on to the end. I will say though that the section with the singer ends on an awesome fucking moment with him destroying her bedroom, and that is probably one of the best parts of the whole movie. I would say is the destruction of the bedroom. You made a face about that.
I was just shocked that that of all scenes, because it is a very powerful scene. I don't know if it'd be my favorite in the movie, but
no, it's not it's not my number one, but it's obviously one of them. It's like it's iconic. Like it's one of the iconic scenes of the film. Like a lot of people talk about that scene when they talk about this movie.
I felt like the singer stuff when it got into where it got into that kind of like not a montage sequence because it's not really what it was, but where it goes more towards like how he's forcing her into the singing.
Like this and like the teacher, the stuff with the teacher.
It just felt like it was just yelling for like 10 to 15 minutes straight, and that's kind of dragged. But it does end up
Well,
with, at least
I
with a
didn't
nice
think I
payoff.
didn't think that I didn't think it was yelling for 10 minutes straight. You mean like the fight or like the final fight or?
Well, because there's like you have like her in the room after the after Jed's thing about, or like a review of her, and she's just screaming at him about that, and then screaming about it. She never gets I mean, rightfully so, screaming, like yelling, I should say, about not really getting what she wants to do. She doesn't want to do the opera. She just all he doesn't really love her. He just wants her to love him and stuff, and like, which is all valid, but it
Yeah,
just kind of felt like it was like hammering a lot of the same message
uh,
for like 10 minutes straight.
I was like waiting for that to boil over and happen. I think my issue is like how long it took to have the. I was like I knew it was coming, so I was just waiting for it to happen. And like the teacher stuff, I like the it was like trying to be like this comedy thing. With like she sucks at singing and the teacher's trying to get her to sing, and I wasn't interested in that so much. I was fine with the fights. Because like you get building and building. It was like building up to that, and that was like this big payoff to this sequence. And then which then ultimately pays off. It keeps getting escalating and escalating and escalating until he destroys the thing.
Yeah.
The big fun fact of the destruction scene is that he cut his hand on glass storing it and just kept going because to keep the performance, because it was like all he wanted to be real, obviously. And yeah, it's pretty badass, I thought.
Wow, Leonardo DiCaprio himself.
Yeah, that's the thing. This movie did everything. This movie did so many things first. Well, at least in terms of Hollywood.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, saying that maybe I'm confusing it with just how the bits before the fights dragged, and maybe that's what I think, because now that you're talking about it, that is definitely I think what is making me more dislike that like section of the movie. Is definitely, I feel like, has its weakest points in this section.
It's just the gag. The gag gets. I think they play the. I mean, we both have issues with the same section, but it just might be for different reasons. But the gag getting played over and over of this, I can't sing, but I'm a singer thing. It just went too far.
Yeah, but I did like going into that destruction scene. I did like when she was leaving, her saying the whole, you don't love me, you just want me to love you. I thought that line was great. I thought that little interaction and scene was great. And then she walks out, like leading before that was awesome. I that line is so good, and I wish I would have thought of it at some point.
Yeah. It's just the shots with like the mirror. There's like use of mirrors in that section also.
Yeah.
Like where he's like he opens a door and then there's a mirror on the other side of the door, like a big ass one, and no. There's the one where he walks in front of the mirror and it's like the cascading, mirror images thing.
Yeah.
But then there's he like opens a door where like the door to her room, and then there's another door on the other side, and he like opens that one, and it's just like this weird surreal door within door thing. Yeah, there's like a optical like illusion kind of shit with the camera, and it makes things mesmerizing. It makes like the story could have, if it was shot normally, not for the time, but like for today even, it would be a much more like standard, I would say, boring film. It's the way the film is put together, and also in terms of the rearranged narrative structure. We didn't talk about that hardly at all. But everyone loves a good Tarantinoing. I think that's the way I always call it. As a growing up, I'd be like, oh, they Tarantino the narrative.
Yeah.
And because it's like baby's first rearranged narrative. No, and that's no disrespect to his movies. I'm still a fan. But this did it first, and it does it really well, and it does it in a way that is cohesive, really, really cohesive. I would say much more cohesive than the next film we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I got lost sometime, not lost, but like I got like sucked into, I should say, some of the kind of like flashback vignettes in this where I kind of forget about the overall like anchoring story, which is just finding out what Rosebud meant, because you get so delved into just this being a
This
character
man.
piece about just
Yeah.
this guy. And then it would go back to the modern day stuff, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. Like
That's
that's
why
the
we're
whole
here.
reason we're
That's
yeah."
why we're here. That's a really powerful effect. I feel like to have it's
Mm,
almost like like you said, vignettes. And like they're rearranged in a way, but it still is easy to follow. I don't think you get lost because it's simple. I think the narrative is simple enough that rearranging that's what doesn't make it difficult to
yeah.
digest. And like you said, there's these moments that you just want to live in, and like I want this to be the movie. Not like to say that anything else you don't want it to be, but these moments where you're just immersed in the world
Mm.
and being in it, and then you get pulled out, and you're like, oh wait, I mean, I guess I'm in something else now.
I think a lot of the what makes it flow too is that all of the flashbacks do kind of happen in chronological order, whereas you're not so much jumping back and forth in time, but like 1930 something, then back to 27, then back to late the 30s, then back to the 1890s or something. Like it's nice and keeps you
There's
up.
a couple moments. I mean, in the beginning, we see him old, we see him young, then we see him middle. Like it does. At a certain point, it is like on chronological. Like you're
Mm,
right. Other than jumping to the present and then to whatever point in his history we're at by that point. But in the
yeah.
beginning, it is very rearranged.
Mm,
Like we were seeing moments where he's dying, then we're seeing moments when he was like, running for office or an interview on the boat somewhere, and they were like all this weird compilation. And
I
I
guess I
like
was I guess I was referring more to just when the writer goes to interview the people of his past.
Yeah, no,
There.
that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
like in the beginning, it's rearranged, and then we
Mhm.
settle into this progression after that. And but it's still, yeah. That's I guess that helps it makes it easy to follow. But in the beginning, there is like this bewilderment.
Mhm.
And there's like it's just like kind of confusion and because you're getting bombarded with not only information, not and it's not even exposition. It is a lot of showing. It is a lot of showing and not telling in the movie. Um, and that's what makes it great as well. You get shown this like it's like you can't. I think there's a line in Mank that was like you can't learn everything about a guy in 2 hour movie, but
Yeah.
we can make him feel like you did. And I definitely feel like I learned all about this man. Like I have an understanding of who Charles
Mhm.
Foster Kane is. He's a complex character. I don't think like as much as William Randolph Hearst felt like this was like a character assassination, and ultimately Kane is a bad man for a bad guy for making Susan do the singing against her will and yada yada for his own pride's sake.
Mhm.
And but in the first half of the film, he's like a really cool guy who wants to help poor people. He's like philanthropic and he's cutting edge and he's cool and confident and handsome. And you really like him. Everyone likes
Mhm.
him, and that's how. And it builds and it builds and it builds until the character assassination point, and then he starts to lose himself slowly and slowly until his ultimate death. Because he loses himself not only in Susan, but in
Mhm.
building his palace of Xanadu. He's purchasing statues, and oh man, if this movie was in color, it'd be vaporwave before vaporwave with all of the European Greek statues and
Mhm.
the big empty hall with the Grecian pillars and his palace is we didn't really touch on this, but the ending parts where we are in his palace and it is everything is like it's like a giant's house.
Yeah.
Like the scale of everything is huge. The fireplace, there's whole
Yes.
trees in the fireplace, and there's a bonfire inside your house, and everything is big. The jigsaw pieces are big. He sits at a at a chair that is extremely far away from a table that is far away from the couch that is far away from the fireplace. It is surreal. It's dreamlike. That is in particular, I could see, in David Lynch. I could see that whole sequence in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the ending of that, and Kubrick work. I can see the influence in just bites, even, just because somebody isn't like doing Citizen Kane style again. It doesn't mean that there is an influence in just these pieces and these techniques, and like I said, I'm sure just because somebody can be influenced by a technique that was used somewhere else, and just because it was used here doesn't mean that that's where they got it from. But just this movie being as hyped as it is, as the best movie ever, you can kind of give it that credit, because I feel like every film head has to go through this road at some point in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that it is still like the best movie ever, just because of what it did for its time, and with its just technological and just creative restraints of still figuring this whole medium out. This is still we're right in the middle of the transition from radio to film being like a mainstay, with especially because televisions are right around the corner and everything. And I think that personally, I don't think
the film's been around for like
70 years.
50, 60, 70 years at this point. At least 50 plus. And like
80. I think it's 80 now. The movie came out in 41.
When was the film? I was just being generous with. I just like, is it 1870s, 1880s? I don't remember.
Wait, that film started, or when this film came out?
Well, no, when film was invented.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant when this film came out. Sorry. But yeah, film.
I was talking about when the movie came out, but
yeah,
from when film was invented. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry, misunderstood.
That's fine. That's no problem. Because like this is very much ushering in a new wave. Not to use that quote, because it's literally a term for a later wave in cinema, but it's just like in Hollywood, it's like in Hollywood kind of it takes time to absorb what's going on in the art form as a whole, whether it's these eras, it's like something from Europe or something from indie independent things or what have you. Hollywood is still at this time about making money, just like it is today. And that some things in that regard never change. But eventually, it's going to absorb these things and take a chance on something that's something, powerful, or something that it changes the world,
Yeah.
And if more eyes get on that than something that is niche and obscure, then that's going to have a bigger influence on future filmmakers. Like a Steven Spielberg, has a huge influence on future filmmakers because we've all seen his movies.
Exactly. And like with something like this, at the time it came out, it it didn't win Best Picture at the Academy Award, but it is taught in every single film class, and it is considered the staple of granddaddy of modern cinema. So it's just like, you never know what's gonna be that influential thing, the next step, even if it isn't regarded as the best thing at the time. Because like you said earlier, like this flopped, I guess, at the theaters, but like look at it now.
Yeah, and we'll talk about why in a second, because I think we've pretty much we haven't gone like depth. We haven't broken down scenes and in-depth analysis. Honestly, there's a reason why they do classes on this, because we could break this down frame by frame and make a whole podcast just about that. Like the nuts and bolts are you could keep going into the nitty-gritty with this. But it is an incredible film, and I think it lives up to the hype that it gets. I don't know if it's the best movie I've ever seen, but it has to be in the conversation because of how expertly and perfectly crafted it is.
Yeah, for just soul pioneering alone, it has to be.
But like I don't like weighting it because of because of for its time. I'm not a big fan of that. Like does it stand on its own today? And I think it absolutely does. I don't think it's
agreed.
like I don't think there's a weight for it's just like that. You consider that on top of it. That's what makes it like incredible. That's what makes it like lightning in a bottle.
The fact that modern movies are still use this format and this way of storytelling and stuff like that is why it's still, I think it can stay in the conversation on its own. But just knowing the fact that it is 80 years old, comparing it to anything modern, that it is still in the conversation, I feel like is a deserved weightedness. Like man, like I don't know, college me just so. I was just a little punk. I should have taken this stuff a lot more serious because there's so much to learn and just get out of this. It's more of an experience, especially as a filmmaker.
Oh yeah, as a filmmaker, this is like I don't know the right word, but it's like a sampler of all these different techniques and especially practical techniques for those that are looking to get away from the CG and how to tell a story with that. It does seem really expensive. I don't know what the I didn't look up what the budget is.
Like $850,000 ish. Which for that time would probably be like a $10 million budget now, maybe.
So it eventually did make its money back through re-releases. I do see on the Wikipedia, but it's been re-released how many times? I'm sure over the last 80 years. But yeah, so I feel like I want to talk about the production and I want to talk about the how it's gone from how it went from a flop to being considered the best movie of all time by many. So what are you giving Citizen Kane?
I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
Wow, giving it a 5.
Ooh.
Giving it a 5, yeah.
The perfect film.
I can't say perfect this many times without giving it a 5. So yeah, there it is. I just, like I said, lives up to the hype. Whether it's your favorite movie or whatever is whatever, but absolutely don't let hype affect your opinion on something. I know so many people that are like, I don't want to watch that movie because people, old men talk like it's the best movie ever or whatever. But in many cases, they might not be the best movie ever still, but they are still good and still worth learning and exploring.
Yeah, this is a movie that younger contrarians will circle back on in their 30s and appreciate.
And that's exactly what I've done right here with this.
Yep, it's not the same.
So I wanted to talk about Orson Welles a little bit. Orson Welles is a really interesting guy. I've been kind of went down a hole of interviews later in life. Apparently, I don't know if it's because he needed money or what, but he was constantly interviewed, constantly a guest on talk shows, constantly. He's doing commercials, and there's this really infamous wine commercial where he's hammered during it, and there's like a million outtakes, and he's kind of just like, they give him a script, and he doesn't use it, and he just makes up whatever he wants. And he's just very much like, I'm a genius, but I'm kind of, I know that I'm past my prime, and I'm just living my life, and I'm proud of what I've done, and he's confident in himself. Because he knows what he's done, like a Kanye energy, just less aggressive and chaotic, more relaxed, and he's very erudite. He speaks with this almost European feeling accent, like it's very sophisticated, and I'm like theater. Like he's got one of those kind of voices, and then the performance, his performance is not like that in Citizen Kane, but. And he's got a really deep, rich baritone because doing radio. He's got a radio voice, and I don't know. And I feel like when I was a kid, I knew Orson Welles first for doing the War of the Worlds radio play that people thought was real, which actually I looked into, and it was just kind of fabricated that people thought it was real. So it made Orson Welles famous.
Jeez, that's some viral marketing.
Yeah, basically viral marketing for the time. I know when I was a kid, I also thought Orson Welles was H.G. Wells, who wrote War of the Worlds, and it took me a while to separate the two Wells for War of the Worlds.
I did not know that. I thought it was Orson Welles wrote it as well.
Yeah, H.G. Wells is the author of War of the Worlds. Orson Welles did the radio play version that went viral.
Went bah.
For lack of a better term.
Guys,
And
just think, if we land this, we'll go viral.
and that was all before that was all before Citizen Kane. This is all before 25. And then I think he tried to do a couple films before Citizen Kane, and they failed. And then this is the first one that got off the ground. This is probably one of the few films apparently where he had final cut and full creative control of every element, which is why it's considered as one of his best. I think I did do some digging that he has a bunch of other films that are supposed to be really good, but some people do argue that a couple later films are up there as well. So I would be interested in even watching more of his stuff. Another thing to note, he was attached to the infamous Jodorowsky's Dune, the Dune that was in production before the Lynch one by Alejandro Jodorowsky, that was supposed to be way more colorful and psychedelic and weird as fuck. It's a really interesting documentary. I believe I briefly touched on it in the Dune episode. But he was apparently supposed to play Baron Harkonnen in that. Which because he's very big by the 60s. He's very, very large man later in life.
I'd be down with that though.
I really want to watch the documentary. I didn't get a chance to. I'm at the end of the book of the first Dune now. But yeah, I'll leave the Dune talk for now. And so as far as the film itself, the history was. So Mank briefly touches upon this, but the infamous press man William Randolph Hearst, the character of Charles Foster Kane is considered to be a composite of William Randolph Hearst, Joseph Pulitzer, other Chicago tycoons like Samuel Insull and Harold McCormick, but mainly popular thought, it is considered that it's basically based on William Randolph Hearst, who is a major player in the Mank movie. And he did not want this movie to come out after knowing that the character was based on him. And he did everything that he could. He was a very powerful man at the time, and considering that he controlled press, but also he was very, very rich, so the influence there, which is in Mank, that he used all of his power to try to get the movie pulled. Apparently, a lot of theaters refused to play it. He paid reviewers to bomb it. All that stuff. So when it came out, it failed, but it was kind of like an orchestrated failure by the powers that be. And then it kind of there's two things that are majorly credited for the movie's revival. First is there's a French movie reviewer, a French critic named Andre Bazin, in 1956, reviewed it around 1956, and said that it was it brought upon a new era in cinema, and it was an incredible film, and praised it for cinematography and lighting and all these techniques. And so they re-released it in 1956, and the movie had a big revival and became a much bigger deal. And then other critics got onto it, and apparently a bunch of other French directors, future French directors. I think Francois Truffaut is one. Is noted the heavily praised the film as well. And then the last thing that is credited for the revival is television. Making a deal with RKO. RKO Pictures apparently was one of the earlier companies to sign a contract with television to put all their films on TV, and Citizen Kane, was aired in full, a bunch. And so people gave it a shot and learned that it was actually really good. I thought that was all super interesting. The other thing to note is what the movie Mank is about, which is the writer of the main writer of the screenplay, Herman J. Mankiewicz, is he is pretty much the sole writer, but originally was not intended to have credit on the film. It was intended to have Orson as solely everything. To be because he's this wonderkind, he's this prodigy, and they refer to him as such in Mank. But he's this prodigy. And so I think that's the segue I wanted to give, the little lecture I wanted to give to segue us into Mank. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about with that? Are you ready to Mank it?
I'm ready to make it. I was just gonna say, just that whole backstory, which in Mank touches upon, it made me enjoy and kind of I was felt more invested in the story of Citizen Kane after.
I did.
It's super cool.
Yeah. I thought Mank was all right. I was not blown away by it. I didn't think it was, I don't know if it's Oscar level. I'm a big fan of David Fincher. I think David Fincher, I was saying this to Riss last night, but I feel like when Baby's first film buff stuff, like when you're in college or in high school, or is like, Tarantino or Kevin Smith or, I don't know, shit like that, Spielberg or whatever. And then you go to like the next level, and I feel like David Fincher is like the first name on the next level. That like super well known household name, and you've probably seen like half of his movies without even knowing that he did it. Popular films include Panic Room, Gone Girl, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
I didn't realize it was him.
Exactly. Fight Club, 7, Alien 3. He's got a hell of a filmography. And he also created the show of Mindhunter, which I was a big fan of before they canceled it.
So pissed.
But yeah, the dude has done a lot of awesome stuff. So I was going to watch this film regardless, and I felt like you can't really watch this film without seeing Citizen Kane. And boy, you can't watch this film like without seeing Citizen Kane. I don't think it would be very watchable without that. But it's good. It's good. Apparently, it was written by his late father, the screenplay, Jack Fincher. And I looked actually into his dad. His dad was a writer for Life magazine and other things. He has a Wikipedia. David Fincher is second generation successul. So
wow.
Yeah, you find out that almost everybody is. You more and more all the time. It's a little disheartening that the greats were already rich. But so there. if you want to make it in show business, you're gonna have to get rich by doing something else, and then give your kid the generational wealth and support and creative support. That's what I feel like I'm starting to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I living in LA for 5 years, you learn very quick that nepotism is what runs that city, and you're just hope that somebody who is already in power just likes you enough to bring you along
give
for
you
the
a
ride.
chance. Yeah, bring you along for a ride. You gotta be Remora, just eating parasites off the shark, and
As it is, that's how it is. I mean, like sometimes it works out where genuinely really great people, and I have some friends that are like that, and then there's people I've worked for in the past that are just kind of like, I know you are only here because of who your dad is or your mom is, and you're terrible at your job, and you make all of us below the line positions just not want to work in film because of it. But it's welcome to Hollywood, baby.
But yeah, it's not the shit on David Fincher because he's still great. And still
phenomenal director.
A lot of great films. Oh, yeah, Zodiac is another one I didn't drop. That he did. But yeah,
after mic drops.
Mank. Let's Mank it. What did you think about Mank?
Hot take, but this hot take won't reflect my score. But I like this more than Citizen Kane.
Oh my God! Stop!
I love Gary Oldman in this.
Oh my God! You're crazy.
I just love
You're
hearing him
wrong.
talk
You are wrong.
Hey, hold on. It's not gonna reflect my score at the end. It's just I love Gary Oldman's performance in this movie so much that I came away more enjoying this, but it's a little long. But this is a little long. I think this could have been under 2 hours. Chop 20 minutes off.
Honestly, I didn't think Gary
Um,
Oldman's performance was good, but it wasn't like my favorite Gary Oldman performance.
There's something about it. I just really loved hearing him just talk, and just his that
Oh
like
man.
regal transatlantic like style of speaking was just so like it's like butter talk, and
I
I
think this
love it.
movie is fine to good. Um, it's solid. I like Amanda Seyfried's performance probably even better than Gary Oldman's. But
Yeah, she's good too.
Gary Oldman's doing his thing. He's doing Gary Oldman shit. I just watched Hannibal recently, and he plays a character with his face like gone, like that gets ripped off, and he like has like he's still alive after, and he's like Gary Oldman's always doing these hammed up characters. I really did enjoy the character of Mank. I really enjoyed his story and his style, and he's very enigmatic. He's very educated and clever, and but as far as the movie itself, I think it's a little like at times it's a little trite. At times, in the beginning, it's a little lost. I feel like it kind of meanders in, but it gets settled as it goes. And once we get to the first dinner scene at William Randolph Hearst's, that's when I'm like, oh, this scene is really good, and I'm interested now. Like I was kind of easing into it, and it felt like just another like biopic for a while. There's even moments at the end where I was like, man, you kind of in a biopics they got to check off certain things. There's a Patrick Willems video about music biopics that is really good. It like points out all the formula to it, and I think one of those pieces of the formula is you have scenes where you establish where the creator is inspired by a life event, and it is directly inspiring a scene in the movie or in the thing that they make or a song. Like there's a scene in I Walk the Line stands out where Reese Witherspoon's character says literally, "You ain't gonna walk no line," and then he writes the song "Walk the Line," and that's it.
Yeah.
There's a moment at the end of this where Orson Welles like smashes some shit, and he's like, "Oh, I think that's our ending."
Yeah, it was just like, oh, that's exactly what we needed. A violent altercation between you and Susie. Between Kane and Susie.
Yeah. It just like that happened. And I was like, that was just an example of like moments where I was like, it like brought it down a little for me of biopic formulas. But I did like it. I was just hanging with Gary Oldman, and that'll get me by most movies.
Yeah.
Hanging with Gary Oldman is I'm pretty. That'll get me by anything. But and I think maybe because I read so much, like I said, I think we said this before the podcast started, but I read a lot about the production of Citizen Kane before I watched this movie, and I kind of on accident learned a lot about some of these things. I just didn't learn a lot about Mank himself because I wanted to save that for the movie. But I don't know. I'm gonna pass it back to you because I've been talking for a while. But like I feel like the pastiche and like how it's made, like trying to seem like it's from like a movie from the 40s or whatever, like the black and white, and I don't think that works. Like it looks like it's shot on brand new cameras because it is, and that's okay. It's just I expected more of the like old school effects, and it kind of only happens in the election scene. There's like the what's it called did this too. Last Night in Soho with like the kaleidoscope like shit like around the head and stuff.
Just nothing but cross dissolves on cross dissolves on cross dissolves.
Yeah, and like that too. Like I know he didn't want to probably rely on that as a gimmick. Like I'm gonna imitate Citizen Kane, so instead I'm just gonna do it for this one scene. But yeah, like I think once the movie got settled, it was pretty cool, and I was interested through the rest. Is a little long. By the point of the suicide scene, I was like ready for the movie to be ending, and there still was like 40 minutes left, or like 30 minutes left. But the ending was good. And once, like I said, once it got going from that like beginning where it was just kind of him with the car crash and the laying in bed and like just getting the setup of the movie was a little messy and a little meandering, but once it got going, I was interested and entertained through the rest. And it was interesting to see some of these things play out, and I was very interested in William Randolph Hearst. Being the Hearst Castle being the big inspiration for Xanadu, in Citizen Kane. But yeah, nowhere near how much I enjoyed Citizen Kane, or how much like in terms of the films. But definitely cool. And if you're really into Citizen Kane, I think this is just something you should watch. Also.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to diverge from you on the way it looks because I loved it. This is it is shot on. I just looked it up when you were talking. It is shot on red helium. Fincher is a big red guy, but the way that it is, because red has monochromatic sensors that they specialty do to give out, where it's they're not color sensors that just meant for black and white, and you get so much more of this like unique texture, like crisp look with it when you don't have to worry about a sensor calibrated for color. And so much of this movie to me felt like actors on like a roller stage, or just like on matte painting or whatever. Just the way that they did the highlight exposure on this, it just everything glowed and just looked so like they look like they weren't in front of the actual like buildings or houses on a lot of like the big wide shots. And I love that look, and that hooked me in from the start. But I can agree though that for me, and I didn't really know what the hell was happening until the first Orson Welles call when they talk about 60 days instead of 90. That's for me was my grounding point of knowing like, okay, now I know what's actually happening in this movie. Because just like you, I went in blind. I just knew it was about Citizen Kane in some way. But I had the same like look at my phone mark, but not, mine was at 50 minutes left. Which is just before the suicide thing. But I feel like after the suicide thing, because from there it gets more into the divulgence from Mank from the rest of his writing group and the big wigs at the studios, and then that kind of reeled me back in, like culminating in that big dinner scene at the end where he's just hammered, like doing his like pitch script that's just essentially talking shit on Hearst. I just so good. That whole thing was so good, and that I just feel like, which is my main critique. I feel like a lot of movies is knowing when to trim the fat, especially whenever, like when you're David Fincher and you're doing a Netflix movie. I guarantee he has full control on this, and just the way of the filmmaker Finch is. A few of my friends worked on Mindhunter, and one of them was part of the production on it. They hired his company to do all the rentals and stuff. And working with Fincher, he was like, this guy can do everybody's position on set himself and better. And he's just it's kind of like how Wes Anderson is. Everything looks the way it does when it comes to like the lighting and the way it's shot. That is so like I can see in this and appreciate, because it just looks so clean but unique at the same time. Like I enjoyed the black and white and being a modern look black and white. But I wish there was more than just the transitions saying like interior Mankiewicz's bungalow day or whatever. I like them. I want more.
I got it as a motif because of the writing.
Yeah.
Like it's like okay, cool.
I wanted more stuff like that to be in this.
Doesn't got the cool ass transitions of Citizen Kane though. Oh my god. I gotta remember while we still talk about. Well, I still have it remembered. And before any further into Mank, but in Citizen Kane, I got jump scared by the like parakeet cockatoo thing that shows up on the screen and screams to transition to like when the butler or whatever sees the final fight. Like it's kind of that is the transition to the destruction scene and the big ass yelling scene and all that. And boy, was that really cool. It's like superimposed over the shot. Like it doesn't look great because it's like pre-green screen or very early, but I don't think they don't have it then. It's just like they took the shot and they probably cut around it and overlaid it, like laid it on top of the film or whatever. And boy, did that scare me. And I was like, is this the first jump scare? That's what I wrote down.
That's funny. I mean, it could be. I think what it was is that it was like a feathered thing where the bird is just on the left hand side of the screen, similar to what they did with the old man Jed with the flashback thing.
Yeah, they use it
But
as a transition. It wipes
yeah,
across.
yeah, and it's having that is I didn't jump scare you, but I definitely was like, oh shit, check the volume because it was so loud and screeching.
Yeah, it just was. It was so like it was almost abstract. It was very very creative as a transition, and I've seen transitions like that in later movies, but just to see it done at such an early point is just was fascinating to me, and was one of my like, it wasn't my favorite part or anything. It was just a super interesting technique, that they did. But all right, back to Mank. Yeah, I feel like that, there were more parts about it that I liked, but really just boiled down to the two dinner scenes at William Randolph Hearst's. Like that is what the movie kind of came to me, and it's like I would like that's the two moments that I was most interested in. Like kind of the rest of it, I was kind of drifting along in the world, and I was excited every time that Orson Welles came on the screen, but I knew that they were just like you couldn't put too much of him in, or it would be about
Take
Orson
away.
Welles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Orson Welles, by the way, played by Tom Burke, who it took me to the end of the movie to figure this out. I saw him. He's a British actor, and I saw him in the movie The Souvenir with Tilda Swinton's daughter. I forget her first name. She's actually a pretty good actress. But it was really good, and his character was a piece of shit in that movie. And it's just like, whoa, like you don't sound anything or look anything like he has a cleft lip and everything. Like he looked completely different, and his voice sounded identical to
100%.
Orson Welles. And I knew that's like they used him on the telephone first, and you didn't see his face because like you just heard the voice. And I'm like, I'm closing my eyes when they at the very end they play real Orson Welles talking about Mank. And it doesn't sound any different than the actor.
Agreed.
It's just a little fuzzier. That's it.
Yeah.
Man, he's a good actor, and that showed it for me there. But
I thought the same thing when they showed the video of Mank getting his Oscar. I was like, damn, Gary Oldman, identical. Like I think both of these guys nailed the voices.
I never heard. I don't know what Mank sounds like.
They played him at the end of the movie, getting his little Oscar thing. He's like, "Do you have anything to say about to?"
No, that was Gary Oldman. That was.
Oh, I thought the way that they
that was
froze
not
frame
the
on it
real
with the
Mank.
text, it made it seem like it was the real Mank.
That was not the real Mank.
Oh, never mind.
Gary Oldman looks nothing like Mank. Ironically enough, Mank looks like the Houseman character. The like other writer that was helping Gary Oldman. Their faces looks very similar.
My mistake then. But I was gonna say you said the two dinner scenes were your big ones. One of my big scenes was when the president of MGM comes in to give the crocodile tear speech about needing to have wages for 8 weeks. Just seeing, because this is at the beginning of when like the film unions are just becoming a thing. They reference the Writers Guild and stuff. And
there's a lot of socialist. There's a lot of pro-socialist stuff, and that's what I wanted to talk about next. Because obviously I'm into that too. But yeah, finish what you're saying.
I was gonna say it was so interesting to just see, because you're seeing it behind the scenes of like this guy's talking about how much money they're just wasting on shit they're not even gonna make. And then he walks in to say, "We don't have enough money to afford everyone's salaries because of the Great Depression. I'm sorry." And then on his way out, it's just like it convinces all these people to just be like, "Yeah, we're down with it," and doesn't even make good on his promise of paying the back wages, and just fucking. It's just like, man, Hollywood was always been Hollywood.
Essentially that's what I got out of this. There's definitely this is not a love letter to Hollywood. This is probably the opposite. Interesting that it is a Netflix film also. That not that that's not Hollywood, but it's definitely out of the way of the big film releases.
It's funny because Netflix, a lot of my friends work on Netflix shows, and they all complain about how Netflix is penny pinchers and just like
Oh, that
trying to
they
get over
are.
on so much
Yeah, they
things.
are. Actually, that's a good point. Glad you brought that up because they are apparently notorious for um, running things on the lowest budget they can get.
Yeah.
And you can see that with a lot of their shows that come out.
Mm.
The
Like this would be one that they would probably give unlimited money to,
yeah,
like
or
to
like
a
the
point, because
Irishman.
it's yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They'll have their heavy hitters, but like everything else is just like the stuff that's shot here
like
this
the
past year. Like art,
Isn't the Resident Evil movie or the new Resident Evil thing a Netflix thing or no?
I
No, I
didn't know
don't think.
that.
Maybe I think there's a show and a movie, and I think I might be confusing them.
Yeah, I know an animated show came out last year.
Not animated. There's a live
Oh,
action thing coming. But
oh.
anyways, um,
Anyways, yeah, the that's Hollywood being Hollywood is just so wild to me. That's just always kind of been like that. But that was leading into the heavy political themes of this movie that you were
yes,
talking about.
yes. So Upton Sinclair is actually a character that's talked about. A character in the film oh my god, a character in the film talked about constantly. He is played by Bill Nye the Science Guy in the film,
Yeah.
and I noticed that right away.
Mhm.
So Upton Sinclair was a writer. I think most famous for The Jungle, but also stuff like Oil and I'm brain farting, but I know there's at least two others that are like household names. So he's a very, very great writer, and I actually didn't know that he ran for governor of California in this time. And me and Riss looked into that a little bit. But yeah, he lost and was spouting a lot of socialist ideals. And I think a lot of people don't realize because of the anti-communist waves post World War II, but American people have flirted with socialism in good handful of eras of American history in the later 1800s and around this time as well. I think the success of FDR's programs, I think opened a lot of people up to wanting things to go further
Mhm.
and whatnot. And you definitely see a lot. This movie is definitely pro-socialism. It is anti-capitalism. Maybe not in it's definitely anti-con. It's like explicitly. There's a few lines that are like about the difference of socialism and communism.
Mhm.
And I think Mank has a line that's like, socialism is wealth for everybody. Communism is poverty for everybody.
Yep. Yep.
And apparently I said that to Riss, and Riss said that that's actually a saying she's heard before. But I thought that was, that's kind of like summing up. There's like a pitch to modern people for socialism and trying to remind people that communism and socialism aren't the same thing, but they were
Mhm.
tied together because of American conservative propaganda, and they still are to this day. And it's like, this movie's from 1940, and there's some of the things these people are saying about socialism are identical to the way people talk about it today.
Mhm.
And also the way that the big money machine, the big political machine, always is going to stamp out, popular socialist candidates that have and that is also, which is the inspiration for Charles Foster Kane's political assassination in the film, which denotes his downfall as a human being.
Yeah. The it's nuts that just the way that people just refuse to just blindly, like when they have the scene in this movie where they're talking, where the director Shelley shoots the reels for the campaign against Bill Nye the Science Guy, the Sinclair Upton.
Yes.
Um,
I wanted to talk about that too. Go ahead.
it's even to the point where it's bringing Mank like not to tears, but it brought the director to kill himself because of the like they said it's like half real, half hired actors, but it's all propaganda, it's all nonsense, and there's so much of that just plays to so much today.
Yep,
Obviously,
with
this movie was
internet
shot.
propaganda.
Yeah, obviously this movie was shot then, but this is all based on things that were happening at the time, and it's just like it's old snake. War never changes.
Yep, propaganda never changes.
Yeah.
I think propaganda was very, very prolific in this era and before it. So you're like the early, I mean, even honestly in the 1800s as well. But the early 1900s with the newspapers and telegraphs and radio and stuff, and like you just had a real way of controlling the narrative if you controlled the news. And that's a thing in Citizen Kane, and that's a thing in Mank, which is made today, and that is the kind of the connective tissue they're going at. Is this critique on super capitalists and the pro socialist stuff, and I like that. I'm not anti that, but I do think that it was in this film in particular, it feels sometimes a little ham fisted. Not always, but I think because they keep hitting on it, it's just like, yeah, like today, today.
It's a good chunk of like the second half of the second act and the first half of the third act.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
There's a huge chunk of that,
and that's honestly where the movie starts. And I was interested in the Upton Sinclair stuff, but but it's like the Shelley stuff takes a lot of time, in that area, and I was starting to lose it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not a little bit. I definitely is starting to lose it.
When I will say though about the Shelley scene when he gives the bullets to
his wife.
No, he gives them to Mank. When Shelley gives the bullets to Mank, it pulls him out of the gun. Yeah. I'm looking, it's like, wait, there's only 5. He left one in the chamber, and it didn't matter anyways.
No, I counted. There was 6.
Yeah, I didn't like rewind or pause, but it was just a quick
paused
glance.
because I was like, it's like, are they really gonna do? He didn't count the bullets.
Because that's what I thought it was going with, but I mean, he ended up killing himself anyways. But it was for it was a different reason. So it was the minor subversion of expectations. You thought he was going to kill himself, but you didn't think this was how.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So that was like, I mean, it's a sad moment, but it was just kind of like they were trying to build tension. That I think that was just a cop out ending to that, if that makes sense. But
yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's a weird I think it's ham-fisted, like you were saying. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to say this. It's for sure it becomes ham-fisted because by the end of it, I'm just sick of politics, and I feel like it's a movie that is supposed to be more about the right. Like it all ties in because Citizen Kane is so many political things going across of it.
It's not that I'm sick of politics, but I'm sick of like how over the top it is, because the ending is still about politics, but the ending is good.
That's essentially what I'm trying to say. It's just the bits of it in the movie, it's the same thing over and over again, across the 2 dinner scene things, and then again in the second dinner scene when he's just essentially rehashing his entire play idea, which is just essentially the how Hearst goes from like young progressive into old capitalist, and we got it, I guess. But I don't know. I still like it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that is true. That in the end, he kind of made like I guess if you're not familiar with Hearst's history, I was only familiar with the old capitalist. So to hear that, he actually grew up as a young idealist as well, and he's like, okay, so he literally is Kane. I don't know. It was good though. I like it. That I actually just realized that might take it a little down, but I like the performance. So like it was what carries the ending.
Yeah, and one of the things about the ending I wanted to ask you, and this might be one of those things that makes me sound dumb, but I just wanted to make sure I took it right. They mentioned the organ grinder's monkey parable twice, and then Hearst explains it the second time. But so is Hearst saying that Hearst is the organ grinder guy, or is Hearst the monkey? Or is Mank the monkey?
No, Mank is the monkey. Hearst is the organ grinder.
Okay, because the way he describes it is that the
dance
organ grinder
monkey dance.
Yeah, is a poor old man who's just there to do the box, but the monkey's the one that like feels like they've got the power and all that stuff. And I was like, well, is Mank is Mank representative of the laborers who are poor and smelly and don't shower, but they're the ones doing the work so that the monkey gets its money? Or is it
the monkey thinks it has the power, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually. It's the one that's actually the slave, because it's the dance. It's dance monkey dance.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what I figured, but I just wanted to because the way that Hearst character or Hearst described he made a point to describe the old guy as like poor, old, and smelly or whatever. I was like, are you trying to say
no,
that that's
I think
you
maybe he's
or?
trying to make himself more sympathetic. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you don't understand. Well, even like the JB or whatever no, not JB. What the fuck is that guy's name?
LB,
LB.
LB
He
Mayer.
says right before he leaves, like, you don't know that he pays half your salary, and it's because he
Mhm.
likes you, and it's because he likes the way you talk, not the way you write. And it was supposed to like make Mank feel bad for like shitting on the guy who pays him because he likes him.
Yeah,
And it was like trying to make, I think, Hearst seem sympathetic, not to the audience but to Mank
yeah,
in these final
yeah.
moments, I guess. um and like I think it's of note, the Mank is who brings up the organ grinder parable earlier in the film, and I think it's
Mhm.
in the later timeline, before we
Yeah,
learn
he's
the
singing on the
inspiration.
bed with Mrs. Alexandra when they're writing. He brings it up to her right before like a flashback starts.
All right. Do you have
But
anything else you want to talk about Mank?
um, I don't know. Overall, like you'll see what I mean by wait for my score because I love the performances is the movie for me, and strip away the performances, I agree with you. It's more of just like a better than okay movie.
Yeah,
Um,
good. It can be. I don't have anyone. I don't have a problem with anyone thinking it's good, and I don't have a problem with anyone thinking that, like they're entertained throughout the film. Like
mhm.
good for you. It's not the most boring film I've ever seen or anything like that. It's not even
Yeah.
that boring. It's not even really that boring. It's just do
Oh,
I?
I don't think so.
It's just like it took a while to make me care, and then once
Mhm.
I cared, it then was the Shelley stuff, and I cared, but I also just didn't like the way it was all done, and then it got good, and then the ending was good.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, score
Yeah, I can
me.
see how this lost to Nomadland. And I think it is definitely Oscar nomination worthy. I think just because of how goddamn good I think the performances are. But yeah, it carried me. That's what carried me through the whole way without getting too bored, I think. Um, but I think this could shave about 15 minutes off, and it would feel like a clean 2 hours. This would do this movie a lot more justice.
I think the Shelley stuff could have been cut down for sure, and I know that was supposed to be like the emotional weight at that point, but
Mm.
so it
No,
probably
because
felt necessary to the narrative, but it
yeah.
definitely could
Well,
was the area of the film that could have been less for me.
yeah, and it sucks because that's the thing to try to put more weight of responsibility onto Mank
Yeah.
too, and it's not because he's like, well, the studio said this was your idea, and that's so killing himself should
Oh, it
like
could happen, but it maybe just not
yeah,
be as much. But because I get that it's supposed to. That's what inspires him to go on the rant, to go
yeah.
back to Hearst hammered on the rant because he's mourning or whatever.
Hmm.
I just pulled up the 93rd Oscars, Academy Award winners, or nominees. I mean, and I have now seen not all of them actually. I still haven't seen The Father, Promising Young Woman, and Trial of the Chicago 7. But
I haven't seen any of those.
I've seen the rest. Um, and I would say that Minari is still my favorite of them all.
Hmm. That
Um,
agreed.
Nomadland is good. Don't and Nomadland's probably my second favorite of all these. Sound of Metal maybe is my third. Judas is my fourth. Mank is my last of all them ones I've seen. But yeah, Minari. I'm sticking
Same.
with it.
I've only seen the three Minari, Nomadland, and this, and I would say it's yeah, I would say it's Minari, Nomadland. It's just that Nomadland just has so much more heart and reality to it. Um, while this is based on true events, it definitely feels more like not phantasmal, but just like more. It feels more of like a story and less of like a move or not movie. I don't know how to describe it. But No Man's Land just feels more real, and I emoted so much harder in that movie. Same with Minari. Minari just, it's so good. It was so good.
Yeah, it's amazing that it didn't win that many Oscars. It got supporting actress, um, but that is mostly, at least for the big ones. That's all I'm seeing. Mancott best cinematography.
I could believe that. I love the way this movie looks.
Um, I didn't. Yeah, and like the more I think about it, like I get that it's going for like a clean retro, but more modern, clean thing, and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
like made it look like, you get what you're saying about like it almost looks like they're on a green screen sometimes. Um, because of like how like it kind of looks surreal, like the background in the foreground.
Yeah, it's such a unique look, and I feel like this pushed black and white to a new level of like high detail, clean clarity, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It kind of reminded me though of like movies like HD, like maybe movies from the late 2000s or early 2010s that were trying to do something black and white, like for like a flashback or something. And
mhm.
I think that's why I didn't like it. I can't think of the example, but I feel like I've seen it before. But I didn't hate it. It's not like that isn't what made me give it any less of a score, I don't think. But I didn't think I loved it. Let's score this mother.
All right. I went first on the last one. You go first on.
I'm gonna give it a 3.
Oh, interesting.
I've debated between 3.5 and a 3, but I think I'm staying landed on a 3.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna do 3.5. I'm at a 4, solely on performances. Or I really just love the cast in this movie. I could listen to them all talk to each other for hours. Um,
Yeah, I don't think I'd get mad about a 4. Any higher than that, I might fight you. But
no, that's all I was saying. Like, I like this. Came away liking this more than Citizen Kane just because of the performances. But
yeah, I mean,
Citizen Kane is
you
a
did
better
put them pretty
movie.
close together. You did put them pretty close together. Four
Yeah,
and a half and 4, but
I
it is
liked
what
it.
it
I don't
is.
know. I would rewatch this. I
People
would.
liked it. I think other people gave Mank a 4. I think I've seen 4s out there in the wild. Um, but it wasn't a 4 for me. Yeah, like I said, I debated between 3.5, which is very far from you, but I
Mhm,
think I've ultimately landed on a 3, which is, for me, a 3 is still a good, like, fine to good movie, more than
mhm.
watchable. But all right, I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Next week, so I looked and we didn't have anything for next week. So we could do, so I did, there's a new Joaquin Phoenix movie coming out called Come On, Come On. And it's an A24 film, which I don't want to do it just because of that. But I saw that it is the same director of a movie that I love, and it's probably one of my favorite A24 films, which is 20th Century Women. Have you ever seen? You haven't seen 20th Century Women, right?
Mm-mm.
Would you be interested in doing this then?
Yeah, I'd be down with this.
Okay. Yeah. And then after that, we have our new movie extravaganza. Next week is House of Gucci, Last Duel. Then we got Red Rocket, Florida Project, and then they're closing out the year with the Matrix series, the entire Matrix series.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that would be. I feel like it would be a fun way to end the year and celebrate. Um,
Oh,
but
I saw pictures of this Come On trailer, or of like the cover of him with Joaquin Phoenix with the kid. I don't know what it's
yes,
about, but
I don't know what it's about really either. It's not getting a ton of hype. But it could. I don't know if it's gonna be with indie films. You never know. Like, it's either gonna be a movie that doesn't really get a lot of fanfare and kind of just comes and goes, and you might see
mm,
some reviewers, indie reviewers, talk about it, or it's like a lottery ticket where people like it and it goes viral, and then everyone's talking about, come on, come on. Like,
yeah,
indie movies
come
have a
on,
more.
come on.
Everyone has a indie movies kind of can have a slower grow.
Mm,
Beyond, especially beyond the theater. Once they get on
yeah,
streaming and whatnot. But yeah, the
there's less
director's.
pressure to make the money back.
Yeah, that's true. The director is Mike Mills. Is the name. So I'm excited. 20th Century Women. I watched after, not that long after Mom passed. I think me and Riss have watched it a couple times now. Um, yeah, I've seen it. I think 3-ish times. I think I've wanted you to watch it before. I don't. I think it might be one of those films that it resonates with me emotionally. On a high level that might like color my, or like might make me overvalue it, but it's a really good good flick. It's a feminist movie, but it's about more than that. It's more like a coming of age kind of thing, which kind of is what gives me the come on kind of gives me a little bit of coming of age vibes. It's also in black and white. I know you love that.
It'd be excited to contrast a bigger budget David Fincher black and white versus this A24 Mills black and white.
8.3 million budget black and white.
I'm curious what the budget of Mank was, because it's not a big movie.
No,
like, it is fairly small, contained.
I just was looking at it. 25 million.
Oh, that's not bad. That's
double though of the movie we're gonna watch. This period piece makes things more expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
But all right, y'all. Let's wrap it up. I'd like to thank y'all for watching and listening to Best Boys. We'll be back next week. You can find us on all the things, and make sure you give us a like, a review, or any of that stuff, because it really helps us out and get our name out there in the streets. And yeah, make sure you tune in next time.
Catch us in the streets.
Bye. Citizen Kane.
He's here to buy your newspapers.